Okay, folks, we'll go ahead and start right now. I guess I'm gonna go ahead and kind of reintroduce myself. I'm Dr. Shows, S-H-O-W-S, pronounced like cows. My wife is Dr. Albinson. She teaches marketing research. And I have one beautiful daughter, 6, and another one 8 years old. And we're all wrapped up in the out-of-state family here. So we have finished the first section of marketing channels, talking about some of the basics. What we're going to talk about now in these next 3 chapters, just to briefly go over it again, is we're going to kind of show this off. So if I were to, let's share that screen so we can kind of talk about it. Okay, so we've gone ahead and talked about the first of these 3 chapters on the use of power. And what this is the 3 approaches for managing in the channels between the suppliers and distributors. So in the manufacturer, to the wholesaler, to the retailer, to the consumer, who's part of our marketing mix. The effective management of the channels is found in the detail in these next 3 chapters. And so we talked about power and the uses of power, its good uses and its bad. This chapter is going to talk about building commitment and a long-term orientation towards equal or mutual satisfaction. And then the chapter 5 is going to talk about functional conflict. And it's going to talk about conflict in general and how conflict actually, in the right circumstances, can be good. And how do you carefully and judiciously use that to achieve the goals for the common good. It's important, once again, when I talk about all of the things, the use of power and relationships, once again, is that success in discussion of channels, the success is always system-wide. It doesn't necessarily mean that success individually is success everywhere. It's when the success for the common good is sought, that's overall when you achieve that measured success. And so for this chapter, we're going to talk about relationships. And in order to talk about relationships, I'm going to start by drawing on the screen. They're using the word supplier. And I want you to think of the supplier upstream. And they're talking about the distributor. And I want you to think of them as downstream. And it's only for the purpose of this particular conversation that we're using this, okay? So online, if you think of supplier at the top, upstream, distributor on the bottom, downstream, it'll help you in this discussion that we're going to have. Okay. So, one of the first things, however, before I go on, is I wanted to talk briefly about a very successful relationship between Procter & Gamble and Walmart. P&G and Walmart have been successful partners for over 20 years now. They've done many things together. It's considered a very strategic partnership between each other. It has a certain mutual benefit. 2018, 2019, there started to be some strain in the relationship, ironically, because of another distributor out there by the name of Aldi. It seems bizarre that Aldi, of all of the distributors, would be giving Walmart trouble. But the truth is that Walmart has a little bit of difficulty dealing somehow in that level downward. Dollar General gives them problems. Walmart tried to come up with a store the size of the Dollar General, failed miserably. And because there are so many Aldis growing in the United States now, the urge for Procter & Gamble is to jump on that bandwagon and not miss it. Procter & Gamble is selling their beauty products with Aldi right now, and it's not any further than that. But they're able to do it, and the relationship survived because it's been a strong one and a very successful one for both of them. So we're going to talk about that. And one more thing before I go on, I should have done this before, but let me do this first, is I want to talk about where a lot of this theory comes from, where the original theory behind commitment and trust, and it comes from this particular article. This is, by the way, on As You Learn. I would encourage you to read it. It's a very good article. It's one of those, when you talk about a seminal article that changes things, this is an article, definitely. It was in the Journal of Marketing, 1994. The two people are Robert Morgan and Shelby Hunt. Shelby Hunt's known as like one of the ultimate marketing gurus. For my marketing theory class as a PhD, I read out of his book, so that'll give you an idea. So this article came out, as I said, in '94, and it kind of penned the understanding of relationship marketing and where the future is and where commitment and trust and its importance. And so if I were just going to scroll down a little bit, what they talk about is they talk about the nature of transactions in general. And their thought was that there's a understanding relationship marketing requires you to distinguish it between a discrete transaction and any other. And so a discrete transaction, by their definition, is it has a distinct beginning, very short duration, a sharp ending, and it's over with. And the example that Dwyer, Schur, and Orr gives is that if you were to go to a gas station, paid cash, and never came back again, that would be a discrete transaction. What Morgan and Hunt basically say is that every other transaction in the world is one in which there tends to be, or the desire to continue the relationship forever. And so by the nature of this understanding, what they tried to do was find out what were the antecedents, or what was needed in order for there to be long-term relationships in marketing. And what they found was that everything stems from commitment and trust, okay? And so if you have trust in the relationship, trust leads to commitment. It leads to your partners not pursuing opportunistic behavior, so they're not going to go out and try to make a killing on something else, that there's an increase of communication, and there's that old functional conflict, that thing that we talked about when I was showing that first slide. There's functional conflict. So we're going to talk about that in the next chapter. And commitment and trust lead to cooperation. Commitment lessens the chance to leave. Acquiescence, in other words, the willingness to get along. All of these things stem from this whole concept of commitment and trust. And so what we're going to talk about is relationship. We're going to talk about relationships and channels, but then we're also going to talk about the concepts of commitment and the concepts of trust. All right. So, why do relationships matter in marketing channels? Relationships matter because there is the hope that both sides will be able to achieve some success. success is always achieved, or in their way of stating it, by both organizations or many organizations trying to achieve a single shared interest. When you have a genuine commitment and a willingness to engage the interactions, basically what that does is it furthers or allows organizations to achieve goals with a minimum of difficulty. Now, the difficulty with the omni-channel experience now is quite simply is with the omni-channel, with its ability to, in essence, incorporate many different vendors under one single unified umbrella, it makes it difficult to be able to spread those relationship connections amongst many vendors. And any of us who've used Amazon or even eBay, you know that there are thousands of vendors that are out there selling. So it makes it much more difficult to achieve the kind of relationship that hopefully will bring you success. And so what you're hoping to do is with these relationships, be able to achieve those common goals, and then with the achieving of common goals, basically build long-term success. So we looked at the supplier over there upstream, and we looked at the distributor downstream. What are the motivations on both sides for achieving this long-term success? Why? Or what is the motivations for achieving? Okay. Well, the truth is, if I'm an upstream partner, the one thing that I want is I want as much coverage as I can with as little cost as it possibly takes. Okay. Now, this happens a lot in suppliers. There's this notion that nobody can do the job better than I can. All right. In that second bullet point, they call it do it in-house technical culture. In other words, they understand their particular goods. They know how to achieve success. And it's very difficult for them to allow someone else to, in essence, plot their success. Well, the difficulty with that is that while they may know their particular goods that they sell, they may not necessarily know how to sell it best to consumers. And that's where the downstream members are valuable. As a matter of fact, essential without them. And many products could not achieve success without the ability for the downstream partners to carry those goods to consumer. All right. The interesting thing is that the iPads did pretty well for Apple in their initial launching, but it wasn't until the iPads actually were sold by Walmart that they really started selling. Why? Well, because once the iPads, the technical side was cleared, basically what consumers were looking for was the best price. And usually the best price on those goods are going to be found at Walmart. And so while they achieved technical success in many other different locations, it was the real selling in bulk that ultimately came out when we went to Walmart. LG did the same thing too. When LG started as a corporation called Gold Star in 1991-92. They sold electronic equipment in the United States and all over the world. And unfortunately, the quality control on them was pretty awful. I mean, I sold several of their Gold Star monitors to my regret. And in 2000, they had the opportunity of rebranding themselves. They bought a corporation called Lucky. And Lucky was actually a distributor in South Korea. They have lots of stores. And they rebranded themselves as Lucky Gold Star, or LG. And then also LG, they branded with the brand mantra, life's good. So anyway, they worked on their quality control, they got better on it, and they were on the forefront of high definition television, and they were looking for a distributor in the United States. And after a lot of consternation, they finally chose Walmart, okay? And for 3 years, from 2006 to 2006, 7, and 8, for 3 years in a row, LG was the #1 seller of consumer electronics. Once again, I mean, it wasn't that Walmart understood high-def televisions as much as Walmart understood the consumers, okay? So what is the upstream motive for building a strong channel relationship? One of them is quite simply, is that they can achieve many advantages with a proper downstream partner. There's many ways of profiting if they're willing to do this, okay? When manufacturers seek relationships to motivate them, they also are there to invest in the ability of going after new markets and new partnerships and increasing with new products in ways that they may not have considered before. Once again, the channel vision of an upstream partner many times can be cured if they find the right downstream partner to work with. They hope to find a partner to be able to coordinate their marketing efforts with. But let me also say this, is that the right partner can also create barriers to entry as well. So what do I mean? If I have a strong channel partner, one downstream, and I've achieved enormous success with them, then another manufacturer who's coming along, another supplier with the same good, is going to find it very difficult to be able to penetrate the market because you, in essence, have a strong relationship with perhaps the dominant partner out there. And so Walmart is there. And though, you know, Walmart does not just seek just one supplier because they have shopping goods. LG has been able to maintain a substantial position because they were the first to be in there, all right? What can also happen is that distributors can withhold market information if you have a bad one, which means that manufacturers can't gain from the knowledge if they don't have a good partner. So an example of this in the 70s, when Polaroid came out with the SX70 land camera, it was the first real, well, it wasn't the first Instamatic, but it made a profound step in technology. The difficulty is that they weren't close enough to the consumers to simply understand that they were too expensive, all right? And that if they'd have been able to lower their prices sooner, they may have been able to achieve a success that they weren't able to build on, okay? So those are some of the reasons why if I'm an upstream partner, I want good channel relationships. What if I'm the downstream partner, the distributor, all right? Well, one of the first things also before I go on in here, it's important also to state that the potential number of partners, both in manufacturing and in distributing, is drying up, all right? So the last decade or so, we've certainly seen the peak or the apex of retailers. In 2013 and 14, they were talking about distributors that were, in terms of the number of them, were simply, it was saturated, the market. And then certainly from 2016 on, when we saw the real jump of Amazon, and then of course, COVID-19 came along at the same time, we're seeing a rapid decline in the number of retailers out in the United States and in the world in general, all right? Because called consolidation is out there, what happens is that when the market share goes down to fewer people and fewer manufacturers, the downstream members try to commit to the survivors to maintain the supply, but once again, you're squeezing down into a smaller group of individuals, all right? What can also be good is when distributors get a good supplier and they help us build strong relationships and allow themselves to differentiate themselves from other distributors. And so, anybody in here work on steel tools? You ever use those? You use them, right? Do you go into an independent dealer or you just work with them before?
I used to work at a hardware store that sold steel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool. Can I ask which one or man?
It was Ace Hardware.
Ace Hardware?
Yeah.
Is it here in Boone?
It was in Charlotte.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, Ace is one of the few national chains that Steel will work with. Steel is very particular about the distributors. There's 25,000 independent hardware dealerships in the United States, and Steel works with about 15,000 of them. And they're exclusive dealers to about 9,000 of them. So I'm preaching to the faithful with you. If you buy a chainsaw, okay, and you never used a chainsaw before, if I'm a Steel distributor, a retailer, you're not letting me out of the door unless I know how to oil it, how to fuel it, how to grab it, what's the safe way to work on it. You're not letting me get out the door without knowing that. And one of those reasons why is because you've got commitment from Steel to make sure that all of those things are done. So you have to have a certain number of individuals who are, work on supporting those kind of things too. And it's all to Steel's advantage. There are other manufacturers out there, of course, of equipment, but Steel does things for its distributor network that few groups do. Steel will invest up to 30%. If you were to build a new wing on the store, Steel would, in certain circumstances, invest up to 30% of the building cost on that wing, just so you could prosper so that they could as well. And that's what this one means. This value-added services makes it impossible to copy. It is a strategic advantage that can't be copied by a Lowe's it's a home improvement, not a hardware store, it's a home improvement store, okay? And the reason quite simply is Ace Hardware can do things that Lowe's can't, okay? They pursue the relationships because they want to maintain an enduring competitive advantage that leads to profit. It all comes down to they want to be profitable. And the way that they're profitable is they invest in unique knowledge that isn't easily passed on and creates a long-term success with their members. It sounds so trite, but it's true. So downstream partners want to be better. They want to be unique. So this is kind of a little cheat sheet here, and you can invest some time looking at it. I'm not going to make you know all of these things, but it is a good kind of sheet to know the fundamentals about it, the upstream members, what it provides to the downstream members. All of these things are to your advantage when you're building long-term relationships. Oh, one other thing that it'll allow you to do. When you have good relationships, it will allow the supplier to manage the inventory of the distributor. And so Procter & Gamble has what's called their vendor managed inventory with Walmart, so that Walmart does not even manage any of the goods that Procter & Gamble does. It lets Procter & Gamble do those things at the same time. Realize that's letting yourself into their system in a very intimate way. But because you have the trust, you're able to do that and achieve advantage. Okay, so let's talk about the actual nuts and bolts of building commitment. We talk about it, but how do we put actions in the plan to further commitment? Okay. The first is you must project continuity. You must first start with a mindset that we're going to be doing business for a long time. They know, and this is an important kind of safety net as well, because in the other side of it, the truth is that it's not hard to replace channel members. In the United States, the barriers for changing are very limited, other than certain legalistic powers. If I want to change my vendors, all I have to do is pick up a phone. And that can cause a lot of concern. But if you work in a way that you want to continue as a partner, that you want to be doing business with them for a while, then that adds a great deal to commitment and to the long-term success. And we'll talk about it. It's non-economic satisfaction. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, in order to have success, you need to have a sincere, mutual commitment. You can believe that there's a mutual commitment, but anybody who's been into a relationship where you're not committed, one of the things that you know is that people are poor actors, all right? Individuals can be good ones, but organizations are not very good ones. And so if the relationship or the commitment is what we call asymmetric, in other words, it's not equal on both sides, it's not hard to tell. I mean, it really isn't. You know, some people are good actors, but generally organizations are not. And partners are very rarely misled for long. And so the need for reciprocity, you know, you do this for me and I'll do that for you, is a very human need that needs to be fulfilled. And so when we talk about commitment and trust, one of the most key things is that you're sincere about it, all right? And when we talk about trust, trust comes down to honesty and the concept of benevolence. And so the first thing that you need is you need to have a mutual commitment. So how do you build commitment? Well, commitment, you start from two serious questions. And one of them is have you ever had a conflict-ridden kind of past with a supplier? Doesn't mean that that it's forever tainted, but what it means is that you need to recognize it, okay? And if you have, what actions do you anticipate the supplier taking? And so if we're going to start building commitment, the first way you do it, or there's two things. One of them is to be selective in who you choose. And the other is to have specialized investments. And so by being selective, what it means is that you don't just simply go with who's ever on the phone book and boom to be your distributor, that you choose among those individuals from that list and you select the one that you believe will achieve the most success. That's the first thing that is meant by being selective. The next is specialized investments. And what these are also known as idiosyncratic, IDIOSYNCRATIC, idiosyncratic investments. Okay. Idiosyncratic investments are customized to your relationship idiosyncratic investments are customized to your relationship and are not easily redeployed for some other purpose. Okay, so if you're building a new wing on this particular hardware store, and this particular wing perhaps is invested in something unique, like let's say you're getting into snow plows in a unique way, electric and, you know, in any way that you wish to choose, it would be idiosyncratic in that you could not use that particular thing to be used in any other unique or different way. It's kind of like throwing money down a dry well, all right? it is not money that's going to benefit you, but it's going to benefit the relationship because it shows that you're willing to invest in something that's only going to bring a return in one way. And so that's what an idiosyncratic investment is. You're dedicated to the relationship. That investment can't be redeployed in connection to any other distributor. You've made it personal to those individuals. And so that supplier knows that you're providing them a degree of protection by giving them this unique ability. And then you're putting in assets that can't be used in any other way. And so that's the first way that those are the first two ways for building the commitment. I didn't care my mouse. Okay. So here are some little bullet point examples. You delegate people and facilities to a particular line. You invest in upgrading and training the personnel that serve that line so that they are more experienced. You learn about and build relationships with those people and those individuals, and you also train the customers in the use of that line as well. The customers start becoming marketing mavens for that particular product. And you ally your names, the Steel name with the Ace Hardware name, and you build something that's unique and special. You can invest in a reporting system that is unique to that particular store. So let's say it's a lumber yard and you have to sell, board feet instead of any other way of doing it. And so you actually change your own reporting system to match theirs. And that's once again, unique kind of way that you invest. And then you locate those facilities near you and far away from competitors so that they're not necessarily in competition with someone else. And these are just kind of basic make-do kinds of ways of adding and building commitment. One of the most important things is that if the distributor enters into the relationship and they believe that it will pay off relative to the cost, then that will be success. That will be successful. The equity principle is extremely important. The equity principle says that if I invest in something, I will get an equal return back. And so the distributor dedicates resources to the supplier. Okay? And so the downstream member commits to the supplier by taking some of their own resources, training their personnel so that they can maximize those goods for the supplier and do joint marketing efforts and those kind of things. When I was in the mom and pop computer store in Lafayette in the 80s, we sold a architectural software by the name of AutoCAD. It had just been out in 1983. You can look up AutoCAD now. It's just one of the most amazing products. And of course, it's advanced in 40 years now. But one of the things that we did is that we sent two of our salespeople to San Francisco, hard job, right? Sent us to San Francisco to learn the software. Oh man, that was so hard. But what it did was we invested thousands of dollars to be able to use AutoCAD, and it achieved enormous results. It was in Lafayette, Louisiana. And so it meant that with AutoCAD and a good e-size plotter and a computer, that engineering firms of just 2 people could do the equal work of engineering firms with 3 dozen. So it was a great synergistic kind of thing. Two-way communication, close participation with the suppliers in the marketing efforts once again, and even allowing the suppliers to see the weaknesses and the strengths as well, all right? Two-way communication, even if the communication is not necessarily wonderful, is all valuable. The doors are open, there's a willingness to admit and understand what your weaknesses are, And ultimately, if you have that communication between supplier and distributor, I bet you between you, you can find some way of minimizing the weaknesses. Okay, so before you make those investments, what usually you find is that the suppliers will make an enormous amount of investment to make sure that the downstream partners have the ability and the motivation to be able to succeed. And so once again, I'm going back to the mom and pop store when we were no longer able to sell K-Pro and 2 or 3 other PC compatibles. I came up with the idea of let's sell IBM. Well, IBM, it was a 40-page application, and it took around 6 months to go through. I'd gotten another job offer, so I wasn't there entirely to see what happened. Well, we didn't get it. But that was one of the things that IBM as the supplier did, is to make sure that you were able to match it, all right? Two-way communication, again, plays a big role. It enables the manufacturer to look over the wall and see the market and what the distributor serves, so that you can be able to more closely be able to invest your good to something that the downstream members can use. Now, with all of that said, before I go on from two-way communication, I want to say that working together does not ensure success, all right? Successful channel partners do have two-way communication, and it is a necessary, but not singularly necessary in order to achieve success. In other words, you need to have two-way communication, but it by itself alone is insufficient to be able to guarantee success. And so those were practical ways of building commitment. Now we'll talk about building trust. And so we start this by defining what is trust. And so, I mean, big duh, trust is essential for strong relationships. Without it, you simply cannot survive. And to trust the channel member is to believe in that channel member's integrity. And so how do we conceptualize trust? Trust is conceptualized as the channel members are honest and benevolent. And what do I mean by benevolent? I mean, benevolent means kindness, and it also means concern with another. I should say another's well-being. And this also goes back to that part about we're all lousy actors, okay? And that if we want to truly have commitment and trust, we must act with honesty and with benevolence, because that's where trust is born, okay? If that other party generally is concerned with another member, then they will want to do certain actions that will continue and to help achieve trust. And so, what is one of the needs that we need to ensure to help build trust? Well, one is the need for economic satisfaction. Economic satisfaction is a positive The next word is affective, all right? Affective basically means emotion or emotional. Economic satisfaction is a positive, effective response to economic rewards that are generated by the channel relationship. Now, economic rewards are typically financial, but we don't put a dollar number on it. Why? Because quite simply, economic satisfaction is achieved into us each in a very different way. Someone could be overwhelmed with just a few extra dollars. Some of us could be awarded with some personal gain that would be nothing to someone else. And so those are examples that economic satisfaction tends to be an emotive state that doesn't come down to dollars and cents. You know, what brings us some peace for one person may not be for another. And so how do we bring about economic satisfaction? Well, not only with the idiosyncratic investments, but we need to make risky generic investments in our channel members. So what is a generic investment? It means that we invest some unique skill to your channel partners that invests and gives them an additional asset that could actually serve the competitors as well. And so it's like training them with some knowledge and making those individuals more competent. And that competence is more desired on the open market. And so it leaves us vulnerable in a way, okay? Because it means that not only do we make specific investments that won't come back to hurt us, but it also means that we create broader ways as well. We make the individuals in the partnership stronger as well. And they're risky because partners can go somewhere else. But it's those investments that produce the outcomes and will increase their economic satisfaction. If I am a worker and all of a sudden I know some unique skill that makes my dollar value go up, makes me more desired by competitors, then that increases my economic satisfaction. And so once we were trained in AutoCAD, one of the guys who was working for with me, he went and worked for Entree Computer down the road. That's what happens, okay? The generic investment can do that, but ultimately the satisfaction that it brings, you can't do without it, all right? That's just one of the natures of those things you gotta live with, okay? Just remember that you can't compare money directly, that it is a state, it is an emotive state and not a utility. And if you build the economic satisfaction in your channel partner, you generate greater trust, which ultimately leads to a greater commitment. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. We're going to talk about, when we come back on Thursday, we'll talk about dysfunctional conflict. We'll talk about distributive and procedural justice. And we'll talk about the life cycle of relationships and what are the keys to success when it comes to having relationships in general. How do we solve those things and create long-term success for our channel partners? Okay, folks, we're gone. Good to see y'all. Can't wait to see y'all Thursday. Everybody online, have a good day, okay?